that's what I'm talking about being proactive. Do you know, like not waiting for disaster to happen. Let's fix it before it does. You know, let's start. I don't know how you do it. I have no idea how you change the mindset of builders. Do you know, and they're just, I don't want to say it, but perhaps they're just trying to get money. Perhaps the insurance companies
I'll say it for
are just
you.
ripping people
That's
off.
absolutely what they're doing.
You can say it. I don't want to get kicked out of America.
We'll let you stay. I don't think there's any doubt that that's what they do. Look at this spectacular place that we are. We're on the bay. If that hurricane had hit here, and we talked about
which
this
it was
in
going
your
to,
podcast,
yeah,
we were the bullseye. We wouldn't be sitting here right now. This would be probably a pile of rubble.
Yeah.
I'm George Siegel, and this is the Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. Every week we introduce you to people who are working on real-world problems and providing actual solutions. Tell Us How to Make It Better is partnering with the Readiness Lab, the home for podcasts, webinars, and training in the field of emergency and disaster services.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on this week's Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. After you're done listening today, if you can remember to subscribe so you can become a weekly listener and even share the link with people that you know, that would be awesome. About a year ago, when I started this podcast, probably a little over a year ago, I met this woman from Australia. Her name is Kerryn Vaughan. And what struck me about this woman was her enthusiasm. And, you know, I thought I enjoyed what I did. I'm not even on her level because she legitimately loves what she does. And she loves sharing her message with other people. And I was a guest on her podcast. She came on my podcast. And then recently, after Hurricane Ian, she invited me to come back on her podcast to talk about what we experienced here in Tampa, Florida, and what we might have experienced if the storm had hit us. And during our conversation, she said, oh, by the way, I'm going to be in Tampa next week. And I said, wow, we have to get together. So I had the opportunity to go and meet her in person and record a podcast episode with her. And I'll tell you, she is even more energetic and enthusiastic in person than she is on her podcast. And that's pretty hard to believe. So here's our conversation. Kerryn Vaughan, welcome to my home in Tampa.
I know, how cool is that?
That is very
well, it's
cool.
Actually not cool, it's very hot. It's very hot.
It is quite a bit hotter than Australia.
Yeah, well, I just come from Detroit actually, Michigan, and it's cold there. Stepped off the plane and thought, I'm going to die. It's beautiful here.
I told you when we were walking over here that I lived in Detroit for 3 years.
Yep.
I loved it. I thought it was such a great place.
Yeah.
But in the winter, well, it's not winter yet, but it can be brutal.
Very cold.
And you got to see the leaves changing and everything?
Yeah, it was just coming to the end. Last winter, in 2019, I was over here, it was coming into winter, it was snowing, cold, and I got drenched in Detroit, not enough clothing, no raincoat, got sick, but I still love it.
Yeah, it is a really cool place. I know it gets a bad rap, and it's really not fair because the people there are great and the city is great. The whole area
I love it.
Is a lot of fun. Now, I want to ask you a couple questions before we go into talking about how you make things better, because I think you're such an exciting, enthusiastic person about making things better. What is your favorite place to go in the United States?
You're going to make me say Tampa.
No, I'm not, because I'm not from here. I live here now. I'm originally from New York, so you tell me the place that you've gone to that you've gone, wow, I could see living here. Is there a place?
Hawaii. Yeah, Hawaii.
Okay.
You're going to call that United States?
Yeah.
It's ours. Well, I love Hawaii.
We're not giving it back.
Yeah, I know.
And then your favorite American meal?
Oh, there's not many because they're too greasy. Yeah. I don't know, honestly.
That would be fair.
Yep. I don't know. I can't think of anything.
So what did you eat in
Chocolate?
Detroit? There's great Greek food there.
No, I don't know. We just went out to a whole heap of places and I don't remember because I ate stuff that I would not normally eat and now I feel so bad. Yep.
Okay. Well, so let me ask you now. Because of all the different things that you do, and we'll have you talk about that, the theme of my podcast is identifying problems and then doing something to make them better. What would you say is the key thing that you have identified as a problem and that you're trying to make better?
Kindness. You know, I think that I do a lot of things, but the one message that I try to get across to everybody is just be a little bit kinder every day because that ripple effect has a massive impact. You know, like I was saying before to somebody else, it's used to be 6 degrees of separation. You know, now it's like 2 degrees of separation. Just that little bit of kindness to somebody else, and it makes them believe that they can make a difference. You know, it makes them feel great about themselves, and they go and change something. But
why do we have such a problem with that? Why
I don't
people seem to
know.
be getting meaner?
I don't know. I really don't know, because I can't see how it's so hard.
I mean, if you watch this country, you probably, I imagine from afar, see a lot of discourse,
Yep.
a lot of tension, because people on opposite sides of the political spectrum can't even talk about their
Yep.
differences.
I know.
So how do you inject kindness into that?
Well, I didn't say I had the answer.
It's just that you're working on it.
I'm working on it. Well, I'm working on it through. I mean, we can talk about the stuff that I do. You know, it's like, people have an idea that they want to make the world better. You know, it could be any sort of idea, like doing a dog rescue, or it could be starting a domestic violence shelter, or it could be just, small things, writing a book about something, And most people believe they can't do it because they think it's too big, and they have a lot of self-doubt and that kind of stuff going on. And so my job, this is what I get up every day for, is to inspire people to believe that they actually can make a difference. And they try to, somebody's just said to me, only today, I was talking in Brighton in Michigan, just this weekend. And my talk was about confidence and about why we don't take action. And I was saying that we always try to do the really big thing. So, I want to, for example, proactive heroism. Well, let's say, reactive and responsive is dragging someone out of a burning car. But proactive is, well, let's look at, can we make fireproof paint? Can we make a fireproof spray so we still might have car accidents, but we're not pulling people out of burning wrecks and that sort of stuff. So proactive is like preventing. What can we do to prevent the need for these reactive heroes and that kind of stuff? And I talked about how if we can, when we build our confidence, because there's 5 things that I think get in the way of us taking action. And that's self-doubt, imposter syndrome, not knowing where to start, overwhelmed by the big picture, and fear of criticism, failure, rejection, that kind of stuff. And what happens is we live in this world where we are too ashamed or too embarrassed to say, I'm scared, I fear failing, and we shroud it in this, well, if I was confident, one day, it doesn't really matter. If I was confident like you, I'm not a confident person. And I was talking about that, and we go for this confidence like the end picture. Well, I'm not confident to create a fireproof spray, therefore I just won't do anything. And I want to bring it back to, I just want to be confident in my ability to learn and to take the next step, and that shifts the whole thing about confidence. Does that make sense? Rather than...
It does. No, but I think our whole nature, human nature, is, I can't speak for other places in the world, but we're a very reactive society.
Yeah, very.
You'll notice
Yep.
we build houses by the water, and then
Yep.
we're shocked when they blow down because they were built poorly. So rather than build them right, we just rebuild them poorly again.
Yeah, I agree.
And the insurance companies, rather than throw their money into saying, let's educate people and stop this problem, they just come in and try not to pay you after you have the damage. So everything happens after the fact here. So
Yep.
it's changing an entire mindset that I think is very difficult to do.
Well, that's what I'm talking about being proactive. Do like not waiting for disaster to happen. Let's fix it before it does. Let's start. I don't know how you do it. I have no idea how you change the mindset of builders. And they're just, I don't want to say it, but perhaps they're just trying to get money. Perhaps the insurance companies
I'll say it for
are just
you.
ripping people
That's
off.
absolutely what they're doing.
You can say it. I don't want to get kicked out of America.
We'll let you stay. I don't think there's any doubt that that's what they do. Look at this spectacular place that we are. We're on the bay. If that hurricane had hit here, and we talked about
Which
this
it was
in
going
your
to,
podcast,
yeah.
we were the bullseye. We wouldn't
Yeah.
be sitting here right now. This
Yeah.
would be probably a pile of rubble.
Yeah.
Or there would be damage, flood damage up 2 floors. I mean,
Yeah.
just the turn of a storm, not because we did anything right.
Yep.
I think
No,
that's
but we
right.
could have done something right by changing building codes.
Sure.
That's what we need to do. Like, this is where we need to be more proactive. And the thing is, we don't do it because we get away with it. If I can get away with something and charge you a ton of money, I'm not going to, why bother? You're going to keep buying it, I don't know what the answer is. I have no idea what the answer is, but I want to inspire people and empower people so that they take action in their field of expertise. I'm not an expert builder. I have no idea. But if I can inspire someone and they're like, yeah, well, I am in that field and I think I can make change, I want to do that.
When you're in a place like Michigan and you're doing a talk with people, what do you sense is their reaction? Does it inspire them? They come afterwards and up to you afterwards and say, "Wow, I had no idea about thinking this way? Does it wake them up where they just look
Yes,
at
it
things
does. It really does. I had somebody come up to me and say, well, actually in 2019 I did a workshop there, and this woman, Jamie, this is the T-shirt I've actually got on. Sorry, George, not yours, but I will put yours on later.
What's up with that?
Coffee Rescue, and she was at my workshop. She had an old ambulance that she turned into a coffee van. It was fantastic, right? And she just loved her coffee, loved her coffee business. But on the other hand, she wanted to do dog rescue. And she was like, well, I can't do both. So after sitting in my workshop, she's like, well, I can do both. I can actually start giving some of the profits from my coffee, to
the
dog rescue. And now she's teamed up with Joe Gatto, from Was Impractical Jokers, and they've got Gatto pups that he's got Gatto pups, and she's giving money to that, so she's doing both. She was there this time, and she was actually telling people while I was running the workshop, believe her, this stuff works. And afterwards, another lady came up to me and she said that her and her cousin are going to build like a cabin getaway for battered women up in Colorado, which they will. I know they'll do that. Somebody else said that that's it. They're writing their book now. They're going to go home tonight and start laying out the chapters and that kind of stuff. And I always tell them you've got to take action within 24 hours, or you're not going to do it. You're just not going to do it. And then I got I've had 2 emails since leaving Michigan only 2 days ago, people saying how impactful it's been. So yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
I think that 24-hour thing is pretty important, because I think of all the trade shows that I've been to, and you fill that bag full of stuff that you walk around collecting.
Yeah.
And then you get home and you don't look at it. So
That's
all of a sudden, a couple months later, it has no context. You're going, what is this? What is this company? What is that company? And if you can actually just do it, I imagine that makes a huge difference.
Makes a massive difference. I say to them, if you don't do it, you're going to take this home, put it on your kitchen bench, and a week later you're going to either throw it out or put it in your room somewhere, and it'll never get done. But if you just do, and I'm really big on that first step, and that first step could be just looking something up on the internet. It could be just making a phone call. It could be just telling a friend. That's all, because once you get the ball rolling, you're telling well, I'm going to go woo-woo and say you're telling the universe, but for some other people listening, they might think, Kerryn, that shit doesn't work, right? But you're telling your brain, you're activating something that well, let's go scientifically and biologically. You activate your reticular activating system. It actually looks for what you're telling it. So if you're telling your brain everything's wrong, it'll make sure that actually happens. But if you're telling your brain, and when I'm saying telling your brain, you're saying it outwardly, so you actually hear yourself say it. I'm going to do this. It starts looking for opportunities to make that happen. So I don't want to explain, I'm not a neuroscientist, but this stuff actually works.
That's what I was going to say. So you could tell people that you've actually done these things and it does actually work, as opposed to thinking it's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo that somebody says to you. Like I know you probably get this with your podcast. A lot of people that are coaches or motivational speakers, they all want to come on to talk, and a lot of times the message is all jumbled and it's very similar.
Yeah.
I had a guy on recently though who said his whole premise is getting the workplace, taking people outdoors. So you're walking with people, talking outside and getting out in nature.
Yeah.
And I go, wow, I thought that was really good. That was a different approach. And with you, it was, you were so enthusiastic and so positive about everything. And I think that really makes a difference.
Yeah. Look, I believe in this stuff. I've seen it happen over and over and over, and I love it. I love it. And yes, I think because I know it works, I get so enthusiastic about it. People listening to me go, yeah, I'm going to do this because she said it works, and I give examples of how it works, and then they're like, well, there's no reason why it can't work for me. So they go start it. Now, I'm not going to say they all finish it, because that little voice in the head starts, back again. You can't do this, the whole imposter syndrome stuff. But for those who do push through, and it is hard work, they do it. They do it, whatever it is they set out to do.
Now, how much more difficult is it if I hear what you're saying and I try to do it, but I'm surrounded by a bunch of people that just they're rolling their eyes and going, oh, that's a bunch of garbage.
That's difficult, really difficult. And that is about finding a handful of people who are encouraging. And they might be completely out of your circle. That whole Jim Rohn thing that says you're the sum of the 5 people you hang around with. I think that's really important, because if people are putting, and families will often do that. Yeah, you've said that before. That's not a good idea. Why don't you just focus on, something else? But I think you've got to hang around people that are encouraging. At this workshop on Saturday, I asked the room. I said, "Is there anyone in this room who thinks that they're looking around the room and they think their idea is really dumb, and everyone else in the room has got a great idea that they can fulfill?" And mind you, nobody had talked about their ideas. One woman up the back said, "Yeah, me." And I said, "Well, what's your idea?" And she said, I've got a friend who's broken up with his girlfriend and he wants to express it in a song, and I wrote the song for him." And I said, "Do you see how powerful that is?" And she's like, "No, not really. I don't think I'm as good as anyone else in this room." And I said, "You actually probably, like that stuff can save a life. It can save him, you know, doing something stupid because he hasn't got an outlet to deal with his emotions, that stuff." She said no one's ever encouraged her like that, you know, and she was she even come to our after party and she was just like, she couldn't get enough of me telling her how good she was, you know. And I think that stuff's really, really important. But she sent me a song and it's called "Victim, Don't Be a Victim, Be a Hero," and it was insanely beautiful, like a Sarah McLachlan song. And here she was thinking that in this room, everyone else would have had fantastic ideas, but hers wasn't. So it's crucial to be around people who are encouraging you.
She could have been the most talented person in the room.
Oh,
possibly.
Probably. I'd say probably. But, you know, if we're not hearing it from people, we're just going to not believe it and think that, well, I'm just me, I'm not good enough, you know, that sort of stuff. But and that's what I think is important when I talk about kindness, is to tell people, you like to be enthusiastic about people, you know, and say, "You're doing a great job. I love what you're doing. I love what you do." Not to bullshit to them, you know, but really, if you think it's great, encourage them. That's kind.
Yeah, this guy that I was talking about that had the outdoor thing, he was also saying something about a gratitude loop where you think about people that might have influenced you or directed you in your life in a certain way, and you make a 30-second recording thanking them and then sending it to them.
Oh, what a great idea.
I mean, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
The problem I had was I was coming up with more people that held me back than I thought that people that helped me. So I was having a tough time coming up with names.
Oh, well, just do one. Like I always say, do one. Do the first one.
Exactly.
Just find one, and then you'll find another.
Now, I remember when we did our first podcast together, I told you, I was talking about how difficult it is to find an audience, how difficult it is to grow.
Yep.
And you said you can't think about that. You put it in terms of just trying to reach one person.
One person, yep.
Talk about that.
Well, you know, this started for me years ago. I played in a band and we were playing in a pub in a hotel, and this cricket club came in and they were drunk and obnoxious and really awful. And I said to my drummer, there was just me playing guitar and the drummer, and I said a few obscenities I won't say on your podcast, but basically that I could just rip my guitar off and smack them around their head. You know, I was so angry with them. And he said to me, "Kerryn, look at that lady up in the back corner with a blue jumper on or green jumper on." And she was tapping away and singing. She was in her own little world, singing to our music. And he said, that's the person that you're doing it for. The power of one, you know. And I'll never forget that. And it was probably 20 years ago. And I always think with workshops, with talks, with everything I do, if I can reach one person and change one person's life, then my life, my job on earth is successful. You know, because you don't know what that one person's going to do. You don't know. And I don't even do downloads. I have no idea how many downloads my podcast gets. I have got no clue. I never look. I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care how many reactions I get on Facebook. I don't care how. I don't care.
God, I wish I was more like that. I'm too competitive. It bugs the crap out of me when I think I've done a really good show and maybe very few people listen because I look at the numbers all the time. And then I see some other podcasts where it's two knuckleheads sitting in a room talking about nothing. And I see that thousands of people are listening to that.
So how is that benefiting you?
Benefiting me that I'm doing that to myself? Yeah. It's probably not, but I think that's also what drives me to keep doing it. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm not going to fail at this. How can I, you know, I like to think it's good stuff.
How can you make it better?
How can I make it better?
Yeah.
And so I keep trying to do that, but I can't. I understand what you're saying. I just haven't been able to fully embrace it.
But we're different personality types anyway.
You're much nicer than I am.
That wasn't what I meant. But why look? I don't care. I just don't look. I just do not care. And I literally mean that. I do not care. Of course I want people to like me because the world is much nicer when people like you. But I don't need people to like me.
You don't need that validation.
I don't need validation. I'm going to go and do what I'm going to do. as long as I know in my heart I'm doing good and doing the right thing. And people want to come, they come. If they don't want to come, don't come. Like that's, you know, I only want them to come so they'll learn to do good, but they don't come because they like me.
You ever kicked anybody out because they were just too negative? Said, look, I can't have you. You didn't even turn them around?
Yep. Yep.
Is this something, did you have this when you were a kid? Were you like this? Were you the good kid in the room that was caring and nurturing to all the other kids, or did you just evolve into this as
No, but there's the point. It's not about being caring and nurturing. When I was a kid, I was playing bands with a tennis racket, no matter who else is playing with me, and I was skateboarding with my rabbit up my jumper, no matter who else was coming with me. Do you know what I've always been, and playing music in my room, and I've always been, I'm going to do what I think's right and what makes me happy. So it hasn't been about being nice and kind. It's been about me standing my ground. Yeah, I've been like that all my life, yeah.
But I don't think you could really do the kind of stuff you do if you didn't also have kindness behind it. I think
well,
people would see through that. Because I think when people come up and meet you, I've met celebrities that I idolized, and then I found out they were total assholes.
Same.
Yeah, it's just horrible.
Same.
So it can be an illusion. I've met TV personalities where you think, God, that guy that does the sports guy seems like a really good guy, and then you meet him, he's just an asshole.
Like, is that you're talking about you?
I like to think I was nice to everybody, because I think everybody just, that's their one impression of you.
Yeah.
And if you don't leave them with a good impression,
Yeah.
they're going to go home and say, the weather guy, I just saw the guy, what a jerk.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you have to
agree.
be, I thought I had to be nice to everybody.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of people don't feel that way.
Well, I want to be nice to everyone. I don't feel like I have to. I just want to be nice to everyone. But I meet jerks. Don't worry about that. Like the guy that was sitting behind me on the flight here this morning and constantly head banging my seat. I have no idea what he was doing, but I did want to turn around and say, please don't.
Did you?
No, I did not.
You just sat with it the whole 2.5 hours?
I did, and I just leant forward and played with my phone so that I wouldn't have to feel him banging in my back. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you see the video of the woman recently that had long hair and she had it thrown over the back of the seat and it came onto the tray of the person
I would not
behind
like that. No, I didn't.
Would you have
see
done
that.
anything about that?
Yeah, I probably would have, because I'm not keen on hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably would have said.
Maybe cut it off.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. No. I would just say, your hair's in my food. Could you? Yeah.
And you don't want to go off on an airplane because Kerryn is very much like Karen. And
I am not.
No, not personally, but you wouldn't want people saying, "Oh, look at this."
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Because everybody's got a camera
and assuming
now.
that I was a Karen.
Going off in public on people has
Yeah.
an extreme downside to it.
It
People
does.
lose their jobs.
Yeah.
People can get in a lot of trouble with that.
Yeah, I'm not big on going off on people. No.
Yeah. So you probably did the right thing on the airplane.
Yeah, I did do the right thing on the airplane, and then I look at him when we were getting off. I looked at him. He looked at me, and I thought, someone loves him. There's got to be something nice about him. I'll love him too. That's what I did.
I had somebody tell me one time, you never have any idea what's going on in that other person's life.
Yeah, yeah.
And you've got to have a little, it comes back to kindness or understanding. Maybe
It
it's
does.
understanding.
Or empathy.
Or both.
Yeah.
So what would you say to people, let's put a button on this, somebody who's sitting out there with an idea, maybe it's the next great song, maybe it's the next great house that could be built that will survive a hurricane, but they're just sitting at home going, I can't make a difference. What would you tell them?
You can, absolutely can. And you know what? You might not be able to, you might not know how to build a house or how to change your building codes or anything like that, but you can do something. You can step up and start talking about it. Do you know what I mean? You can, everybody can do something. Absolutely can. Am I not giving you the right answer? You're looking at me like, more, give me more.
No, I think that's a great answer. That's telling people to do something.
We can do something, yeah. We can do something. And we might not be the person, but somebody listening to you or somebody you talk to might be the right person. If we don't open our mouths and speak up and say this is a problem, nobody will do anything. So every single person can have an impact. Every single person can have a ripple effect.
I would say the downside of social media is we see so many videos of people complaining about things and things they don't like. And that's part of what my theme was, okay, we'll make it better. Don't just complain about it.
Agree.
Complaining is kind of frustrating to listen to all the time.
Yeah. But I think in America, and you know, your American audience might not like me saying this, but me being from Australia, when I landed in America, I landed in New York, and I actually wrote a post on it, you know, that the energy was like, oh, it was so aggressive and thick, and I got swept up in it, and I was so angry. I'm like, oh my God, what is this energy? And then I had to stop, and it was, I said to myself, right, just stop. What's the very next thing you need to do? And it just pulled me right back down. But I have noticed that when you talked about America being very divided, it's a natural energy that I see within America that is just grinding, and and it's just, for me, and I'm not saying Australia's perfect, that's not what I'm saying, but it's a much more laid back.
Well, I think every time I've gone to New York, the first day or so, everything is fast.
Yeah.
And then as you're there longer, maybe you weren't there long enough, things slow down for you, and it starts to calm down a little bit, because it just can be really overwhelming right when you get off the plane there.
That's what happened, yeah. And once I sat down with these 3 African American guys on this platform with, just like steps, and we're just sitting there. And I didn't realize, I just sat between them, and charged my phone and sort of thought, I'm going to sit back and observe. And then I realised that here I was with these 3 dark dudes, and I'm as pale as anything. Anyone who knows that I look like, I'm as lily white. And I just thought, what a photo. And then I just started smiling. I'm just thinking, this is how the world should be. That people just sitting amongst each other, loving each other. Do you know what I mean? And just sharing space.
I think we have a lot of places in this country, though, that are like that. Unfortunately, what everybody sees is the bad stuff.
I know.
I don't think a lot of people are unsafe when they're walking around or feeling, as much as it's drummed up in the media to make it seem like everything is falling apart here.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Look at Detroit. Everyone bags Detroit, but I feel completely safe walking around there.
I worked in downtown Detroit. One time, I was going to this restaurant for dinner, and they told me in the newsroom, they said, make sure you stay on the main road, because if you turn off the wrong street, you're not coming back.
Yeah.
So there are some rough parts in downtown
yes,
Detroit.
there are. Yeah.
But you can also avoid them, and it can be a great experience.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Hey, this was really fun. I want to thank you, first of all, because I find you truly inspirational. But the odds of you being on the other side of the world and us sitting down in person and doing a podcast, I hate Zoom. If I could sit down with everybody in person, I think it would be a much different experience.
It'd be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be. But it's too hard. We don't have a budget for that.
No, I know.
I didn't fly you in. You just happened to be here.
I came to do your podcast. I flew from the other side.
And what'd you get for it?
And for that, I got a Make It Better t-shirt that I should have put on probably before we did this. But
because the coffee thing is pretty cool too.
Yeah, this is pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah. But I love this t-shirt. Thank you.
It was so nice to meet you.
It was so nice to meet you too.
And tell the other guests that come on that they don't all get t-shirts. It just happens to be.
By the way, you guys, anyone else coming on this show, you don't get t-shirts. I'm sorry about that. You have to fly halfway across the world to sit with George in Tampa.
Exactly. And if they do, I'll get
a t-shirt. Well, I kind of opened you up to that, didn't I? Sorry about that.
I would love it if they did. It would be a better show. Thanks, Kerryn.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. All the ways of reaching Kerryn are in the show notes, as well as all the social media ways to reach or follow me. And there's also a contact form there if you have any ideas for future episodes or things that you've liked, that you've heard, or things that you haven't liked. I always love to hear from you. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.